there. Good morning. This is Heather up in Albany at NICED, and I'm sitting here with Christy Tooker, who is going to do the primary training this morning. So we see that we've got maybe about 20 folks that are in. Okay, so that's great. So we've got a nice small group. So you guys are going to get personal attention today. You can raise your hands, and you can also chat at us, and we'll answer questions in real time as we're going through the presentation. So ScorePoint is the product that all electronic responses that are entered on computer by students will be scored on. Okay? So ScorePoint is the Questar product, and what we're going to do is we're going to walk through how to score items, how to set up your scoring rooms, how to print login tickets, how to do read behinds, and all sorts of fun scoring activities, and show you how scoring really transitions into electronic. And I will tell you that overall, for operational CBT last year, ScorePoint was the one platform and the one experience that we had an overwhelming positive response from our scorers in the field. We had about 40 different scoring consortia throughout New York State last year, as well as 4 different scoring vendors, and they loved it. Scorers loved it. There's no more shuffling of paper books. There's no more having to put your hand up to get a scorer to come over for maybe a read behind or any of those items. There's electronic messaging and alerting inside ScorePoint that really make it super helpful, and it's quick. So I don't know if any of you have seen the read times. You can find them on the Office of State Assessment website. There is an excerpt from the ScorePoint manual, the Scoring Leader Handbook that's available on the Office of State Assessment, and we also link to it in the announcements on CBT support. But the read times are cut in half, almost in general, for scoring all items in ScorePoint, and we're really pleased with that. And again, our scoring sites really like this. So we're going to kick it off. So Christy Tooker is going to take it away and start the training this morning. Thanks, Christy.
Good morning. Thanks, Heather. Welcome, everybody, to the ScorePoint training. A couple of things that I just want to touch base on quick. Heather mentioned that if you have any questions, please put them in the questions box. We do have a few folks on the phone that will be able to answer your questions as I am talking. And because it's such a small group, if there's time at the end we'll try to open it up and actually listen to your live voices if you have questions.
Yay.
So with that being said, I also want to just mention quick, when we were on the road shows a few weeks ago, there was a hands-on portion of the training. We will not be doing the hands-on portion. As you can imagine, that's difficult in a webinar experience. So you can reach out to me if you have any questions about that. But just so you're aware, we will not be going into the ScorePoint product today. We will be sticking to the PowerPoint presentation. So the first thing that I want to talk about, many of you are familiar with the Nextera admin and the test delivery system where the students take the test. And with that being said, when the students finish taking their test, how do those answers and responses then get to ScorePoint so that they're available to you to then score? So this is just a little bit of a flow chart that I want to walk through. So from April 2nd to April 16th, so we are opening up ScorePoint. All scoring directors will receive their logins at that point. And from April 2nd until the window for scoring opens on April 16th, at this time, scoring directors are going to be going into ScorePoint and getting basically set up and ready to go for the beginning of the scoring window. So during those couple of weeks, you'll be able to request and print login tickets, and you'll be able to set your scoring and read behind windows. And don't worry if you don't understand what I'm going through when I say set up the scoring and read behind windows and how to request login tickets. We're going to be going through all of that in this presentation. So then during the operational windows, so for ELA, April 10th to the 20th, and Math, May 1st to May 11th, students are in our test delivery system submitting their answers. And then from April 10th to May 11th, there's a nightly process to extract those constructed responses from the test delivery system and load them into ScorePoint. The constructed responses are routed to the appropriate ScorePoint projects based on the lead scoring entities. So last week, if you are a scoring director, you should have received an email asking to confirm that you are indeed the scoring director for your project and that the schools associated are correct. And based on that information, that's how we load ScorePoint. So if you did not receive that email, please reach out to me and make sure that you are indeed, the information is correct and we can work with you to get that set. So then from April 16th to May 3rd for ELA for the scoring windows, and for math, May 4th to the 16th, you are in ScorePoint. You are in ScorePoint. You are scoring readers' responses. Team leaders are distributing login tickets and performing read-behinds. You're also monitoring scoring progress. And also, scoring directors are accountable for timely completion of the scoring and handling of alerts. During this entire scoring window, there is a nightly process to extract those constructed response scores from all ScorePoint projects and then load them back into Nextera so that they meet up with the students' information. It's important to also know that we lock responses in ScorePoint every night to prevent any further scoring, and that includes the read behind. So if there are a certain number of responses that are being scored daily, you also need to complete any read behinds for that, those same responses on a daily basis. So once they are extracted from ScorePoint, you cannot go back at that point. So let's back up a moment. Let's talk about what ScorePoint is. ScorePoint is a secure, online, web-based scoring platform. The one and only way to access ScorePoint is through Google Chrome. So please be sure that you do download Chrome onto your devices and access it that way. It is the best experience for ScorePoint. Also, for instance, if you don't have Firefox or you don't have or you have Internet Explorer, just be sure that you are using Google Chrome. There is no installation required. Again, it's just a website. And there are three major roles in ScorePoint. There's the reader, the team leader, and the scoring director, and I'll be going through each of those today. So all paper-based scoring activities can be accomplished in ScorePoint when scoring 2-, 3-, or 4-point questions, such as scoring responses. You can mark non-score codes and alerts to be escalated in ScorePoint. You can identify non-score items where the student left an answer blank. And of course, you can perform read-behinds. And then I'll talk a little bit later how to manage your scoring period. So there is a time frame that you will need to set up for each day that you plan to score. And when that window is open is the only time that you'll be able to log in to ScorePoint and access your student responses. And I'll go through that process in just a little bit. So here's a little bit of what's going on today and what we're going to be talking about in the order in which we'll be doing that. So first I'll talk about the roles and responsibilities, and then I'll get into the security and system recommendations, followed by how to log into ScorePoint. And then we're going to start simple. We're going to start with everything that a reader can do, everything from scoring and submitting a score. We'll talk about non-score codes, unable to score, reserve responses, and alerts. And then we'll talk about team leaders. And just know as I go further, because this is role-based, everything that a team leader or everything that a reader can do, a team leader or a scoring director can also do. And that's why we're starting off simple. So then when we get into team leaders, we don't need to repeat that again. We'll just talk about how team leaders manage those alerts and then perform read-behinds. And then finally, two of the major tasks of a scoring director are requesting login tickets for their team leaders and their readers, and managing periods. And then last but not least, we'll talk about reports. If you're familiar with ScorePoint from last year, there are some new reports that you'll be excited about, as well as some other new enhancements that I'll go through as we get there. So let's first talk about the operational scoring dates for ELA. The scoring dates are April 16th to May 3rd, and the math scoring dates are May 4th to May 16th. And it's also really important to understand that a teacher may not begin to train for scoring or rate student responses until the primary administration of a specific grade level that the teacher will be rating has been administered in that teacher's school. Here are the differences between paper-based testing and ScorePoint, this computer-based test scoring. So for paper-based scoring, you're used to hearing the term scorer. In ScorePoint, that equals a reader. For paper, you're used to using the term table facilitator, and that translates to a team leader in ScorePoint. And then the scoring leader and the scoring site director or coordinator are combined into one role of the scoring director. So as I go through the presentation today, we'll be talking about readers, team leaders, and scoring directors. So let's talk about the readers' responsibilities in ScorePoint. So first and foremost, they are in ScorePoint to score student responses. While they're scoring student responses, they can identify and mark alerts while scoring responses for items assigned to them. They can mark responses identified as unable to score, and they can also identify and use the non-score code when appropriate. Team leaders' primary responsibilities are to distribute login tickets to readers, and while they do have the ability to score responses, again, they can be in there doing that, but first and foremost, they are overseeing a team. So they are monitoring progress of scoring for readers and items assigned to their scoring group. They're performing read-behinds for readers and items assigned to their scoring group, and of course, handling alerts for their scoring group. And then a scoring director, very important to train their team leaders and readers. Implement the policies and procedures for scoring the ELA and math tests provided in the scoring leader handbook. Prior to scoring, they'll need to request their login tickets and set up days and times for scoring. And then, of course, they're going to be monitoring progress at a higher level. So they can monitor progress of scoring for all readers and all items assigned to their consortium. Monitor read-behinds for all readers and all items assigned to their consortium, and then handle alerts for all readers assigned to them. And then they also have the ability to generate reports. Team leaders also have that ability as well, but typically the scoring director is monitoring through the reports. So in talking about security and system recommendations, it's important that your consortium is working with your local IT staff ahead of scoring to ensure a secure scoring environment. It's important to whitelist this URL. This is the production URL. This is for ScorePoint that you'll be using when you are scoring student responses. This is going to be available also in the ScorePoint manual that will be coming out shortly. Devices with photographic capabilities or that could be used to transport electronic data should not be allowed. You will need the ability to print. So make sure that your device allows you to be able to print, because you need to be able to print login tickets, even reports in some cases. A scoring room is actively monitored at all times. And it's important to remember that devices should always be locked with passwords when scoring personnel step away from their workstations and should not be left unlocked and unattended. This information is also going to be in the ScorePoint manual, but the most important thing on this page is the fact that you need to be using Google Chrome. So there's different operating systems and processors that we support. You can go through this at your own pace when the manual comes out, but we just want to make sure that you are using Google Chrome at all times when you're using ScorePoint. This information I'll also post at the end, but there's a difference in what type of information that you may need help with and who you should be calling. Mind you, if you call the wrong one, we will make sure that you do get in touch with the right person. But if you have scoring policy type questions, those are the types of questions that you need to be contacting the Office of State Assessment, and their email and telephone number are listed there. And if you are having actual questions or problems with ScorePoint itself, the system questions, I don't know how to do something, those types of questions should be routed to Questar's customer support line with the email and phone number listed there. And again, if you forget this and you call customer support at Questar anyway, we will be sure to route you to the Office of State Assessment if it's necessary. So the first thing that we're going to talk about, again, we're starting with simple. We're starting with our readers and our team leaders. So we're going to talk about logging in for team leaders and readers. So different from scoring directors, you will actually receive your emails or your login credentials via email on April 2nd. From there, you need to then request login tickets from ScorePoint for your team leaders and your readers. Team leaders will receive the printed login tickets from you as a scoring director. And then team leaders can distribute those login tickets to the readers. When you print the login tickets as a scoring director, I'll show you that screen in just a moment, but you have the ability to print team leaders and readers for different groups based on what you need printed. But this is an example of what that login ticket looks like. And about 3 or 4 are printed per page, and then you'll just cut them up and hand them out. And I'll go through those a little more in depth, but you'll see that there's a user ID listed, a password, and then it's really important that you notice that there's a role. So you want to be sure that you're giving the right person the right role. So you'll see either a reader or a team leader listed here. And then you'll want to be sure that you're handing out login tickets according to their school and the group and team that they should be associated to. Upon initial login, it will also ask you for a little bit more information. So when a reader and team leader log in initially, they will need to change their password. And on the bottom right, the password requirements are listed there, but it also shows you that when you need to change your password initially. So when you log in initially, you need to change your password, and then it will also ask you to identify yourself. So in the system, and this is when it comes to read behinds and alerts, it's important that your scoring director can track you down and ask questions as necessary. So it's important that you're typing your real first name and your real last name at this point. Also, if a reader or team leader has forgotten their password for any reason, they don't need to call Questar. A reader or team leader will just simply get a new login ticket. So when you're printing your login tickets as a scoring director, it's really important that you're printing a couple extra, but give yourself a buffer so that if someone does forget their password, if they're a reader for group A, all you need to do is give them a new password or a new login ticket, and they will be able to access the same information. Now, if a scoring director was to forget their password, that's at that point they do need to call customer support to have that information reset. So we're going to go into readers at this point. So again, we're going to go through the different tests that a reader has available to them. And remember, as we're talking about this, team leaders and scoring directors also have the ability to do the same things that a reader does. So the primary task in ScorePoint is to score responses. So this is an example of what the score responses window looks like. When you log in initially, along the left-hand side, you'll see a performance scoring button, and then you'll click on score responses. At this point, you'll see on the right side of the page that you'll be able to select an item to score. So based on the group that you are logged in as, let's say that you're logged in as group A, you'll only see the group A items, and that information is right in the scoring leader handbook, and that's loaded into ScorePoint in the same groups that you're used to for paper. So you would choose an item based on how you were trained. And let me talk about training for just a moment also. So prior to even logging into the system, you have already been trained on how to score that item up until this point. You are trained the same way that you get trained for paper-based testing. You actually can be trained in the same room as the paper-based scorers. You use the same materials that you use for paper-based testing, and everything is on paper. There's nothing in ScorePoint to train on how to score those items. So the training aspect is the same as you're used to for paper-based testing. So once you get into ScorePoint, you already know how to score these responses. You've already been trained on that. So you select the item that you're supposed to be scoring, and then click on Score Selected Item. At that point, it will bring you to your first response to score. So I want to talk about this window for a second too. You'll see in the upper right-hand corner, there's a response ID. This is as much PII as you will see in ScorePoint. So this response ID actually does bring you, it does connect to a student. But as a reader, you have no idea who you're scoring, and that's a good thing. So that's the only information that we have that connects to the student so that this score does meet back up with their nicest ID. In the middle of the page, you'll see this is an example of ELA response that you'll be scoring. Again, you at this point already know how to score this item. You've already been trained on that aspect. So all you see is what the student's response was for that item. If you would like to see how the student saw that item, you click on this display item checkbox. I'm trying to use my cursor, here we go. If you click on that display item checkbox, it will actually show you how the student saw it when they were taking the test. You'll see the passage along the left-hand side, and then you'll see the question, and then their response within the constructed response box as the student saw it. So maybe until you're comfortable with what the question and answer were, you can leave the display item checked. And as you become more comfortable, you can uncheck this and basically heads down scoring. So once you have read through the response, whether it's a math or an ELA response, you will then check a score. And the only scores that you'll see here are the scores that pertain to that. So if you are scoring a 2-point response versus a 3 versus a 4, you'll only see the buttons that are associated and the way that you can score that item. So you will, for instance, click on the number 4 radio button. And then at that point, you need to click on submit and get next, submit and exit, or cancel and exit. So you would choose a score and then choose one of these 3 buttons. So let's talk about what each of these buttons means. If you are heads down scoring and you are reading, giving it a response, reading, giving it a score, reading the response, giving it a score, you would just hit submit and get next each time because you are reading the response, giving it a score, and now I'm submitting that score and I'm moving on to the next response. So submit and get next is if you're heads down scoring, click, click, click. Submit and exit and cancel and exit are used in two different situations. So if you get to a response and you want to finish what you're doing on the page. So I want to finish scoring this particular response that's in front of me, but then I want to take my lunch break. So I would click on the score, let's say a score of a 4, and then I would hit submit and exit. And what this does is it submits the score that I just responded to, and then it brings me back to the home page. It doesn't make me score anymore at that point. So that's if you're coming up to the break or coming up to the end of the day and you just want to submit what you're doing in front of you and exit out to the home page. Now cancel and exit, well, let's say we got ahead of ourselves and I didn't want to score this one. I actually wanted to stop on the last question. If I click on cancel and exit, this takes this response and puts it back into the queue of responses that need to be scored still. So by canceling and exiting, you don't need to score this response right now. I just want to take my lunch break. So if you hit cancel and exit, it brings you back to the home page. You'll also see there's a button up here called Clear Scores. Now as you can see, there's radio buttons for scores and there's a radio button for the non-score code that I'll talk about in a second. If I was to choose, let's say, a score of 3 for this, but then I realize, oh, no, this is actually blank. I want to give it a non-score code of A. Because these are radio buttons, you can't uncheck them. So Clear Scores just gives you the ability to have a fresh outlook on this particular score. So it would clear all the scores in the score, it would clear your non-score code, and you would be left with no radio buttons checked at that point. And then again, let's talk about non-score codes. So just like paper, non-score codes of A means that the student left a response completely blank. And you may come across a couple of these while you're scoring. So only if you see a response left as completely blank that you're supposed to be giving that student a non-score code of A. If there's the word and in the box, you have to score it. So again, it's only if the student has left this completely blank that you'll be using the non-score code of A. And again, let's talk about that Clear Scores button again in this scenario. Let's say I accidentally hit the 2, but realize that no, I need to give that student an A. At this point, then both would be checked. So in order to uncheck, we have to hit clear scores, and then you would be able to choose the non-score code of A. One other button that you'll see here is the Unable to Score button. So below your Submit button, you'll see the Unable to Score. Let's say I get to an item and I just don't know how to score it. I've gone through all of my training. It doesn't match any of the exemplars that I trained on. It doesn't match any of the rubrics. At this point, you would choose the Unable to Score button. And by doing that, it actually pushes this particular response into your team leader's reserve response queue. At that point, when your team leader logs in, they'll see that particular response, because they'll see the response ID will be the same, will be in the reserve response queue, and then they'll be able to score it. Now, we've heard along the roadshow that the team leaders could be in the same room as you, so do I need to use this button? And the answer is no. If you have your team leader in the same room as you and they are accessible, and they want to come over to your workstation and work with you on how to score that particular item, they can do that as well. And that, therefore, you can work together on how to score that item and then just continue by giving the student a score and submitting and get next. So this is going to be a local decision, again, if you choose to use that Unable to Score, if you're just going to have your team leader or your scoring director work with you directly before you move on. So when I was talking about the reserve responses, and I'm going to go through a couple more slides, and then we're going to take a break to answer some questions. So the reserve responses. So again, in this situation where I had an Unable to Score and it pushed my response into my team leader's reserve response queue, you'll see here when you're on your score responses window, which I call like the main page, you'll see that everybody has a reserve response bin. And that's one way that something could get into the reserve response bin, is by pushing that Unable to Alert button. It'll push it to the team leader's reserve response bin. But it's really important that that all of these responses are scored before you can close out your scoring project. And there are other ways that items could end up on your reserve response queue, and I'll talk about those in just a second. But in order to score one of these, so let's say in the last scenario where I was a reader and I pushed Unable to Score on a particular item and it went to my team leader's queue. So now I'm looking at my team leader's reserve responses. To score those, all I need to do is click on that Score Responses, the same way that I would start scoring initially. And then I would choose one of these and hit Score Reserve Response. When I click on Score Reserve Response, it will bring me to that particular response. I give it a score and move on. But what's important to know is if I click on Submit and Get Next at this point, it will give me the next item in the queue to score and not the next item in my reserve response box to score. So what I really want to do is I want to, when I hit Score Reserve Response, I want to hit Submit and Exit, so it brings me back to this screen, and then I can choose the next reserve response to score, and then I would hit Score Reserve Response, and again I would score it as needed and then hit Submit and Exit, and it will bring me back to this screen versus getting the next item in the queue. So how else do responses end up in your reserve response queue? Well, there's a couple of ways. So let's talk about number one first. So when a response is displayed for you on the Score Responses or Read Behind Screen, it's reserved for you. It remains reserved for you until you actively click on a button to release it. For example, you hit Submit and Get Next, Cancel and Exit, or Unable to Score. If you leave a response for any other reason, the system retains that reservation for you. So for example, if I don't hit the Submit and Get Next and just simply click on Log Out because I want to go to lunch, when I come back, it will tell me that in my reserve response bin, well, you were scoring this, and you'll see that one response shows up in my reserve response bin before you click on Log Out. So for example, if you click on any other ScorePoint menu options, maybe I just hit that Score Responses box, I close my browser tab, I shut down the workstation, whatever the case may be. If you are not hitting one of the buttons, Submit and Get Next, or Submit and Exit, or Cancel and Exit, it will retain that reservation for you until you score it. Now, another question that tends to come up too is, well, what if a reader left for the day and they left some items in their reserve response bin? Well, as a scoring director, you do have the ability to release those reservations, and we'll talk about that when we get to the scoring director section. Because again, we don't want to leave any of those reserve responses in anyone's bin, because otherwise we won't be able to close out a project. So it's really important that you are training on this aspect of ScorePoint to make sure that all student responses are scored. So it is critical that you score all responses in your queue, whether you're a reader, a team leader, or a scoring director. Because until those are released by you, by actually scoring them, there's no way, well, the scoring directors have the ability to release them, but otherwise they're stuck with you until you score them. So it's important that after scoring a reserve response, if you click submit and next, it will not bring you to the next reserve response, but to a new response in the queue. To continue scoring your remaining reserve responses, return to the main score response screen and select another reserve response to score. And again, you cannot close out of a project if you have reserved responses in your queue. And again, I'll talk about how to release those as a scoring director when we get to the scoring director section. So in completing a scoring item, so let's say that you are responsible for scoring item number 33. When you get to the end of scoring, there's nothing left in the queue to score. There will be a red message at the bottom, and I say this is new because we did change the wording on this, and it says that all available responses have been scored. Check your reserve bin for remaining responses. So that message will come up if there's nothing left in the queue to score. So it's important to attempt to select one more item. Let's just try it one more time, make sure there's nothing left, and then check that your reserve response queue is empty. You'll see that this person's is not empty, so it's at that point important to click on each of those and score them individually. I'm going to stop there for 1 second, and let's see if there's any questions that we want to talk about before I get into alerts.
No questions have come up.
Okay.
Four.
Okay.
Well, there's one, and I answered it. Can a team leader be a scoring director, same person, two roles? Yes.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
But do we want to talk through that? I mean, so this came in from Michelle Kerr, and we do have a lot of smaller scoring centers that did this last year, and even the scoring director could also be a scorer, but we do not advise in that capacity. So, but same scoring leader and director can be the same person. Of course, we ask that you switch physical hats. Switch physical hats if you're going to do that.
You
there you
my
go.
hat.
Yep, there you go. That's it. Now I'm someone different. Are there any questions? Because you guys can raise your hand.
Yeah, we can take.
We can take live questions.
What time is it? We got plenty of time.
Yeah, we do.
Nobody.
You know what? That's okay. They're gonna come, and we're here for you, and that's what we want them to know. So awesome. Take it away, Chris.
Oh wait, I see one hand.
What?
Daniel. Sorry.
Hello, Daniel. How are you?
Oh, let me unmute you.
Okay.
There you go. Hi.
Hello. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. I'm just wondering, because as a Catholic school system in the North Country, this is going to be our first rodeo doing all CBT. And I want to make sure that it goes as smoothly as possible. And I believe we've got our consortium all set, and we're going to have people coming during rating days. How can I make sure that they have their appropriate login information?
Are you the scoring director, Daniel?
I think so. I'm the one man.
Let me look at, let me check that for you. So you tell me first of all, what is your lead scoring entity?
I believe it was going to be us. If it's not the Diocese of Ogdensburg, it'll be Seton Catholic and Plattsburgh.
Are you Seton Academy?
And Seton Catholic.
Seton Catholic. I was close. I knew you were one of the Setons. All right.
Our grade school is only doing one, and our high school, we're doing them all.
Yeah, and I've reviewed your scoring consortia setup. I think you guys are all set.
Okay.
So Daniel, I'm gonna ask you that you
I'll work with you directly.
Yeah.
Daniel, I'll email you.
Because we do have that list. I just can't pull it up live on the webinar at this point.
Okay, yeah.
All right, thank you.
No, thank you.
All right, so let's get back. So the next thing that I wanted to talk about was marking alerts. So I think I jumped too far. Okay. When you mark alerts, so let's say you get to a response and you need to mark it as disturbing content or harm to self or others are your two options in ScorePoint for New York. So let's say I'm reading through a response. Let's say this is an ELA response and I get to the second sentence and I see that there's some disturbing content there. Well, the first thing that you need to do, you do need to score that item, because if you don't score that item, then you can't move forward or alert, let's say, for the instance. So let's say at the bottom, you'll see that there's an alert reason. From this dropdown, you'll choose disturbing content or harm to self or others. In this example, I chose disturbing content. And then you'll also see that there is a comment that you can type in there. And we're just asking that you point the scoring director in the direction of where that disturbing content is. Don't copy information from the response directly. Just for instance, just how you see it here, see paragraph 1, second sentence, so that the person can be directed with visually to where they see that when they are dealing with these alerts when we get to the scoring director section. So again, you'll have to score the item, and then when you do that, you choose your alert, add a comment, and then if you just move on, you would hit submit and get next, and it will bring the next response up for you. At that point, when you mark alerts, again, direct to the location of the content in the response. Do not include details or emotional responses. By selecting the harm to self or others, this will generate an immediate email to the scoring director prompting them to address the alert as soon as possible. And this is an example of what that email looks like for your scoring directors. But as far as working through those alerts, there's reports, and you'll also be able to go to the alerts page that I'll get to in just a moment, that you can work through those alerts one by one. So as a team leader, so now we're jumping into a team leader. And remember, everything that we just did as a reader, the team leaders also have access to. But more importantly, a team leader is going to want to manage those alerts. So when a team leader logs in, they'll see along the left-hand side that they'll be able to click on alerts. Team leaders and scoring directors do have access to the alerts menu. And when they do that, they'll be asked to enter some criteria based on what they need to look for, or what they're looking for. And then they'll see a list come up once they hit search. At this point, you'll see the response ID, the grade, the subject, the date and time. You might want to close the staff number, and then the alert reason, whether it's disturbing content or harm to self or others. If you want to open up one of those alerts and manage it, you would click on alert status. You would click on the new next to each of those alerts. So let's say I click on new next to the first one, and it brings me to how to manage that alert from there. So I can update the alert status and comments after reviewing the response. So you'll see in the middle of the page the original response, and you'll also see the alert reason that the reader had posted with the date, and then any comments that they had included initially. From there, you can then change the alert status and then add comments as needed. The alert status, you'll see new, closed, not an alert, open action needed, and open action taken. At that point, you will be able to, and again, what you do at this point is going to be a local decision, because it's just reported out on at this point. So if you want to make sure that you're working through all of your alerts and you hit closed for all of them, or whatever your steps are that you're going to take locally, and then type in the comments maybe on what you did to close that alert, or just whatever, again, it's going to be a local decision at what you type in here. So then you would just hit save alert, and you can then go to the next alert and work through that one. At that point, once you've worked through all of your alerts, you can also print the alert problem sheet with images text. So under the reporting menu, you'll see the word reporting, and then all of the reports that you have available to you will show. This is an example. Once I click on the alert problem sheet with images text report, This is the criteria in which you'll need to choose, and the status, you can choose all your closed alerts, you can choose the open action needed alerts, you can choose whatever you need to from that status dropdown. And then you can choose the dates at which you want to run the report, and then click on run. Along the right-hand side here, it's a little blurry, but this is an example of what the alert problem sheet looks like. And you'll see some important information. You'll see if they're disturbing content or harm to self or others is checked. It also meets up with the personal identifiable information. So it'll tell you the student's name, their ID, their grade, their district and school information, so that you'll be able to work with those alerts as needed. You'll see the comments that the reader initially wrote, and then on the next page, it will actually show you the response. So that's a 2-page report per alert. The next thing I want to talk about is performing read behind. So options to search for responses to read behind. First of all, you need to, again, under the performance scoring window, a team leader and a scoring director both have the ability to see the read behind. So you click on read behind. And then in the middle of the page, you'll have to choose the scoring or the criteria in which you are looking to read behind. So you can choose a certain scoring groups, content areas, grades, items, etc. You can also choose to read behind a certain staff number or staff name. So if I'm looking to do a couple read behinds per user or per reader, you can go right through your reader list and do read behinds that way. And the number of read behinds that you do at your at each of your projects is a local decision, whether you're reading behind all of the zeros, whether you're doing a certain percentage, whatever the case may be, you need to come to the read behind window by clicking on NY read behind and then choose the criteria from there. You'll see the response ID, the staff name, and then to open up a read behind, you also see the score along the right-hand side. You would click on the R1 staff number that shows there. So I would click on that, and then that would bring me to the read behind window. So there's a couple of different scenarios here when you are doing a read behind. So something, the most simple is if you agree with the reader score. So you'll see at the top that there is the item name, the response ID, what the score was initially. You'll see the response in the middle of the page. And then from there, again, based on the scenario that you'll be using, you might be updating a score or just simply moving on. So when you agree with the reader's score, all you need to do, so this one, is click on submit and exit. So again, you're agreeing. This person gave the right score, you agree with them. You would just hit submit and exit and leave the score as is. And it's important also, as I spoke about earlier, read behinds do need to occur on the same day as the initial scoring for that response. So again, I agreed with this reader score. I see that it's a 1. I agree that it's a 1. I hit submit and exit. A couple other scenarios. So based on the buttons, let me talk about those buttons for 1 second though. So the scores, if you need to update a score, you would click on the score itself. But then as I go through the different scenarios, these are the buttons that I'm talking about. Whether it's update reader score, whether it's submit and exit or cancel and exit. And I'll go through those in just a second. So the next scenario, if you agree with the reader score, oh, it's the same scenario, I'm sorry. If you agree with the reader score, after you review, click just submit and exit. You don't need to consult the reader, you just click on submit and exit. Now, when your score does not match the reader score, there's a couple of situations here. Either the reader's going to agree with you or disagree with you. So the first thing that you need to do when your score does not match the reader score is consult with that person about possibly changing the score. If there's agreement there, if the reader that initially scored that response does agree with you, the reader would then go to your device as the team leader, choose the radio button that you've agreed to. So let's say we're changing that score from a 2 to a 3. The reader is choosing that 3 on your device, and then they're clicking update reader score. At that point, in order to finish actually changing that score, we need that we need to know that the team leader isn't just doing this on their own. And we have one more set of criteria, is that when you click on that update reader score, it actually asks for the reader's password. And that's a good thing, because we don't want the team leader just to inadvertently change scores based on what they think. So this is just basically saying that, yes, I as the reader do agree that you want to change it. So I'm going to change the score on your device. I'm going to click on update reader score, and then I'm going to type in my password. So that's agreement. Now the student score is officially changed. Now what if the team leader comes to the reader's workstation and they disagree? So the team leader wants to change that 2 to a 3, but the reader's standing on their ground and they're saying, no, this is a 2. So if the reader disagrees, you're not going to click that update reader score. Instead, you're going to change the score to what you think it should be and click submit and exit. This will just log that there was a disagreement in the score selected by the reader, even though the reader's score is not updated. So the only way that a student's score will change is if the reader himself chooses the update reader score button and puts their password in. If there's any other disagreement, it will just log it in the report. So by changing the score and hitting submit and exit, it's not actually changing the student's score, it's just simply logging that in a report. And then we have the fence sitter situation. So when your score does not match the reader's score, a team leader or a scoring director should not question a score if the response is a fence sitter response, a response for which either of the two contiguous scores could be justified. So you don't need to consult a reader in this situation. You would still change the score as you would with a disagreement and just click on submit and exit. There is nothing in ScorePoint that uses the term fence sitter. It would just log it as a disagreement as it would for the previous situation. Now, there is a read behind report. So after your read behinds are complete, you click on the reports along the left-hand side, and I'll go through that in just a little bit, what all the different reports are, but you get to all the reports in the same way. You click on the read behind report, and it will ask you for some different fields to fill in, and you can use this to monitor the progress of the read behinds. So you'll see the different, the readers, the items, the number of readings that occurred, performed, accepted, modified, and disagreed. And there's just the percentages and numbers. There's nothing that will tell you what the score changed to. It's just an overall report of percentages and numbers of read behinds. So the next section that we're going to talk about is the scoring director section. Do we want to stop? Is there any hot topics?
Let me check. I don't think so. No hot topics.
Okay.
Does anybody want to put up your hand? Anything? You can ask us anything. Anything. Good. Mary Ann has a question. Oh, go. All
right. Ahead, Mary Ann.
Hello, Mary Ann. How can we help?
We can't hear you, Mary Ann. I'm not sure.
Maybe she muted herself.
Are you on mute? Okay, well, we'll move on from there. If you have a question, just pop it in the questions box. We couldn't hear you.
Okay. Terry Hoffman has a question?
Terry Hoffman, go ahead.
Have we muted all our people?
I've been unmuting.
Okay.
Terry, we can't hear you. Can you unmute maybe?
Her hand is down. Okay, hand down.
Okay.
No problem.
Okay, if you have any questions if we can't hear you through the audio, go ahead and...
Oh, I answered her question already.
Okay.
Heather solved it. Thank you. Thanks,
Mary Ann, did you want to try again? Okay. All right, so we are going to move on now. The next section that we're going to be talking about is the scoring directors and some of the important tasks that they need to do in order to be sure that the scoring windows are set, your login tickets are ready to go. So with that being said, as I talked about a little earlier, on April 2nd for ELA, scoring directors will be receiving their login tickets via email from Questar. So at that point, you'll receive your username and password. You'll go to the ScorePoint website and you'll log in initially. When you log in for the first time, you do need to create a new password, and the password requirements are listed there. They'll also be listed on your screen when you do change your password for the first time. Remember, if you as a scoring director do forget your password, there's no way to reset that yourself. You do need to contact Questar's customer support to reset your password. So there's a new report out there. It's called the Project Setup Report. And scoring directors, this should be the first thing that you're doing when you log in initially. Because what this report does and shows is all the schools that are assigned to your consortium. So you can verify that all the schools are correct. And you can also review the item groups based on the information that you'll receive in the Scoring Leader Handbook. So it's basically just a checkpoint to make sure everything looks good in your consortium and you're seeing everything that you need to see. From there, the next thing that you should be doing is requesting logins. So scoring directors have a different panel called a setup. And under the setup menu, there is a manage periods and a request NY logins. We'll go through both, but let's start with the request New York logins. So at this point, when you click on that, you'll only see this white box first. So when you request logins, it's important that you're requesting logins based on the school of where your reader either teaches, where they're from, where they are retired from, whatever school that they're most closely associated to. And the reason for this is that if I am coming from school A, I can only score responses from school B and C. And all of that work is done on the back end. And again, if I'm coming from school B, I don't want to be able to score my own responses. I can only score responses from schools A and C. So it's important that each of your readers is actually receiving a login ticket specifically from their school. So if you have 10 readers coming in and 3 are from school A, 3 are from school B, and 3 are from school C, you need to request login tickets in 3 different manners. So start with school A. So you can look for school A on the from the drop down. Now, a question that came up a couple of weeks ago is some of the scores that are helping us are actually from a paper-based school. Can they still score CBT? And the answer is yes. And the reason is we load all of the schools in New York in this dropdown. So as long as you, again, are requesting those logins based on the school, their home school, they won't be able to then score their home school. So once you choose the school at which they're most closely associated to, you'll see that all of the groups and grade levels for, again, I only have a small snippet here, but you'll see grade 4 math, and then group A and group B. You'll see group A, B, and C for each of your grade levels that did score, or that did CBT testing. And then you'll see on the right-hand side, there's a readers column, and there's a team leaders column. The limit is 25 per cell. So if I want to, let's say, for instance, request login tickets for group A, I would type in, let's say, 10 in the readers, and let's say I only need 2 team leaders. And again, with the readers and team leaders, just buffer yourself a little bit, because if they do forget their password or have trouble logging in, you just simply give them a new login ticket. So if I have 10 readers coming, let's print 12 or 13 of them. So then you click on the bottom right corner, request login, and at that point it will generate a report. So it'll show you all 10 readers and then the 2 team leaders, and then you'll just cut them up and hand them out. Now, this year it is new that we are able to score, or that our students could be taking the test in an alternate language. So the way that we score those items, we have a way in the back end that those particular responses are being routed to the correct language bucket, let's say. So when you go into the request NY logins, you'll still request your school, and then you'll see that there's a new group. There's an alternate languages group. So based on that, you'll request the number of readers or logins that you need. We aren't asking at this point to request per language at this point. This is just for any of the alternative languages that you'll request reader logins for. Now, when the reader then initially logs in, just as a reader is used to clicking on the Score Responses button, they'll actually see under their item type, item 4 Chinese, item 4 Haitian Creole, item 4 Korean. So they would then choose the correct item and language based on what they know that they are there to score. I feel like there's going to be questions with that. Is there anything coming up?
I see nothing.
Okay.
Come on, folks. Anything? I mean, we did note at the beginning of the webinar that ScorePoint is simple. It's pretty easy, and it's a great transition from PBT. So
I do see the same two hands, and I don't know if it's us or them.
Oh, interesting.
Terry, do you want to try again? Terry Hoffman?
Or do we just have a delay with our software?
Nope, just a delay. No, it's just the hands keep coming up. Let's try Marianne one more time because I saw that new hand. Nope.
I am just dying to know Marianne's question. We've seen her hand 3 times.
I'll continue.
Maybe she can chat it at us, Marianne. If you can chat it at us, we can discuss it.
Not me.
Okay, no, that's Terry. Okay. So Terry's hand is a fake hand. Fake hand. No. Sorry, Terry.
So when those login tickets are printed, again, they'll be printed in like a PDF format, and then you'll just cut them up and hand them out. And again, it's really important that you're making sure that you're giving the right role, school, and group or team to the right reader or team leader. It's also important that if you're printing these ahead of time, these logins are confidential and should be stored in a secure area and not shared. Because remember that we're opening this up for you on April 2nd, and that's 2 weeks prior to the scoring window. So if you're doing all of these tasks very early, we want to make sure that you're locking these up and keeping them secure. If for any reason you need to reprint your login tickets, when you click on the reporting button, you'll see that these are all the reports listed there, but you'll see an NY logins and initial passwords report. So that's just a way to reprint the logins that you already requested. The next important task that a scoring director needs to do is manage their periods. So under the setup menu, you'll see the Manage Periods button. So scoring directors need to set up a window for both scoring and read behind. Initially, when you click on that Manage Periods, you'll see a read behind area, and you'll see a scoring section. So each of those sections, you would click on this little icon here. It looks like a little paper and pencil, and you'll be presented with this new period. So you'll type in the days and the weeks and the times to start scoring. Now, let's talk about this a little more. There is only one scoring time per day, so you cannot have a split day. Let's say you're scoring from 9 to noon, and then you're taking a break for lunch at noon to 1, and then you're coming back and scoring 1 to 5. Your scoring window should be set up from 9 to 5, and actually it should be set up a little further than that actually, and I'll talk about that in a second. But there's not 2 windows per day. You need to open up your entire period for each day. So if you're scoring on Saturday and Sunday, make sure that your scoring windows are open for Saturday and Sunday for the entire day. Now, it's also important to note that, well, first of all, Monday can be a different time than Tuesday, can be a different time than Wednesday. That's up to you how you set these up, and you can edit those individually once they're all set. And you can also delete them as needed. Now, let's say I set up my scoring window for Monday 9 to 5, and it's 4:55, and I think I'm going to need an extra 15 minutes to score in order to finish everything that I need to do. If you don't extend your periods beyond that 5 o'clock, once 5 o'clock hits, you are not able to log in any longer. So it's important that when you're setting these up initially, I would actually give yourself a buffer. And let's say that you know that you're going to be scoring 9 to 5, but I'm going to, let's say, push it out till 8 o'clock. When the end of the day comes, you can then go in here and edit by just clicking on the paper pencil, and you can back those down to whatever the end time actually was. And then if there cannot be any more scoring beyond that time. So if the scorer for some reason goes home and they think they can log in, they won't be able to. So it's just for security purposes that we don't want those extended too far. But at the same time, when you get to be 5 o'clock and you think you're going to need some extra time, you need to get in here and edit that time frame before that time hits. So just a couple things, basically what I just said, we'll recap. Periods can be set up on a day-to-day basis. Only one period can be created per day for read behind and one period for scoring. If all of the day's activities are complete, adjust the end time of the period to prevent any further activity. And then, of course, make sure to extend the periods beyond estimated completion to avoid interruption to either of those activities. Another great new feature this year, if anybody's familiar with this, when new responses are imported into your project, scoring directors will receive an email notification including the following information. And I want to back up for a second. So students are taking the test all the way through the makeup window, but the scoring window starts sooner than that. So there are times where last year that we saw that let's say that you were done scoring, you thought you were done scoring, but then there was 3 students that came in on that last day of the makeup window and needed to finish their test. Well, those responses still need to be scored. So this year we have a email that will actually get automatically generated to scoring directors that will tell them that new responses were loaded into your project, and then it basically just tells you, it's just a notification. So that new responses have been loaded. Here's the website. Go in and run your project status report. And I'll talk about the project status report in just a moment, but then you know which readers to come in from which school so that you can finish your scoring project. So that's a great new feature that we have available this year. We talked a little bit earlier about releasing reservations and how sometimes readers could get those responses stuck in their reserve response bin. Well, there is a way for scoring directors to release those reservations. The first thing that's important to do is run the project incomplete report. This is used to identify responses that have been paused either in the score responses phase or the read behind phase. And then based on that information, you can release that information back into the queue to be scored. So scoring directors, under their performance scoring window, they have this release reservations button. So releasing a response identified on the project incomplete report from the reserved items area allows that response to be put back into the queue for initial scoring or read behind scoring. So based on the information that you found in the project incomplete report, you can click on that release reservations, search based on that criteria, or maybe for a specific person, maybe Sally, and you want to make sure that her reserve bin is empty so that you can finish out that day. Whatever the case may be, then you click on search, and all of those responses will show up below. In order to release those, you just check the boxes along the left column and click on release. And those will put those back into the queue so that the other readers that are assigned to that group can finish scoring those responses.
Well, guess what? We got Marianne's question.
Okay.
So this is really exciting, Marianne. This is your moment. I'm going to read it for you because I think that other folks may have the same question. So this is a great one. So, are there any reports, such as the read behind report, that need to be printed off and maintained in their records for a year? It's a great question.
Great policy question.
I think the answer is no, but we're going to look at Clara Sorbo. Clara?
That's correct. We don't have any. So first of all, two-part question. Ooh. Yes, there are reports, which I'm sure Christy's going to get.
There are great reports that you should print, but saving for a year.
The saving for a year part is what I can answer. We don't have any requirements around saving for a year.
All right.
But yes, there are reports.
Great. Good deal. Okay. There you go, Marianne. You don't need to clear a spot in your shelf for your year shelving for this.
There are some great reports, though, that will help you plan for the next year. And we have information this year for read behind, or for scoring times that we didn't have last year because this is now our second year scoring operational. So, any questions about this?
I know, right? It's usually like a super hot topic, but I mean, you can also ask for hands since we're making such great fun. Oh. So Marianne is asking then a follow-up, I won't need a score report or confidentiality sheet. That's different. That's not something that's not, Marianne, those aren't reports that you're printing from ScorePoint. So we answered the question specifically about, like, say, those read behind reports. And when you get into ScorePoint, you're going to see there is a bevy of reports that are all in PDF that you can open at any time to say, review, how are scores, what does the status look like among your scores in the room, read behind reports, or
and the scoring leader handbook, which will be posted hopefully today.
Ooh, that's exciting, Clara.
Exciting.
Uh-huh.
Does have reports in it for folks to use, and that's probably what you're referring to.
Those are those documents in the appendix.
The documents.
Yep.
In the appendix.
Yeah, I like those.
And they will be there, and they are to be used.
Here we go.
Okay.
Okay. All right, so Marianne, you just chat us if you have a follow-up to that follow-up. We're here.
So this is the last section, and then we'll open it up again for questions. So make sure you have your questions ready to go. We've got some time to actually talk live in just a moment. So I want to go through the different reports in ScorePoint, because there's a lot of great ones and ones that you'll use as go-tos per se when you're going through your ScorePoint scoring process. So we already talked a little bit about the project setup report. Again, this report should be the first report run by a scoring director. It shows all the schools that are assigned to the project and the items assigned to the groups and teams. So we want to make sure that if you are contracting with a certain group of schools, those schools are set up in your project correctly. The project status report, this was obviously a top report from last year. This is going to be one of your go-to reports. If this is used to access the volume of responses to score and to assess the status of responses at a high level for each item. New this year is that scoring directors do have the option to run this report by school. So if you had, again, you had those students that are coming and they're finishing their test during a makeup window, you'll know based on this report where those students' responses came from. So if they're coming from school A, you need to pull in a reader from, let's say, school B or C to score those responses. So this is a great report that you'll constantly be pulling and making sure, when you're done, you want to make sure this complete column says 100% complete. You want to make sure that everything is done in ScorePoint and there's nothing left to score. There's also another new report called the Audit Constructed Responses Report. This shows by school the number of responses received by item, and by school grade the total number of students that have responses in ScorePoint. So another great report and also new this year. We already talked about the Project Incomplete report, but this report is used primarily in conjunction with the release reservations. If you need to release something back into the queue to be scored, you can start by pulling the Project Incomplete report. The item reading times detail report, this contains the reading time in seconds of a response by item and by reader. The item reading times report, this contains the average time taken by a reader to score a response. The item score report contains a breakdown of how each response was scored for an item. It lists the response ID, reader information, the score for each dimension as applicable, any non-score codes assigned, and the reading time in seconds. The ScorePoint distribution report, view the distributions of score points by reader. So if you have a reader that's going through and giving everyone zeros that day, you can see that information on this report. So those are the reports. And then it's really important that finishing out the project, there's nothing in ScorePoint that says, yes, I'm done. It's important that you're constantly running these reports and making sure right up until the end of that scoring window that everything is 100% complete. So scoring directors only, if needed, you need to extend the days and times for the scoring and read behind, manage your periods from the setup window. You need to use those reports, verify that all responses have been scored and that read behinds are complete. The project setup report is going to be a go-to. The project status report is going to be a go-to. The project incomplete and read behind reports are also great reports to make sure that everything is complete. And then, of course, verify all alerts have been worked and closed from the alerts menu. So you go to performance scoring and then click on alerts. I will leave this contact information up while we answer any final questions? If you have a question, please raise your hand and I am happy to unmute your line. Going once? Oh, Anne-Marie.
Oh, there she is.
But I don't know if I can unmute you. Let me see. I sent you an audio pin. It does. Your icon looks a little different than everyone else's.
She is special. That's our Anne-Marie.
Anne-Marie, we cannot hear you. So if you want to type in.
Oh, here. Okay.
Oh,
So
okay.
From Anne-Marie, is there any guidance on how to handle a scorer who is scoring questions much faster than the comparable group based on the report? That is a policy issue.
Well, it's twofold, right?
Yes.
Asking on the report. There are reports that show
Yes,
that.
the reading time.
There is, absolutely.
Great. And then, secondly,
and I will tell you, last year, the way that we usually address this is it was Lois who wasn't scoring fast enough.
there you
So
go.
now Anne-Marie has given us the other side of that.
Situation.
Totally.
So what's your answer about Lois?
Well, that you might need to pull Lois aside,
And it's the
right?
same thing,
She might
right?
need more training, and you might need to do some read behind.
Same thing.
Yeah,
Right?
absolutely.
So you would also have to pull that scorer aside.
Yeah,
review
we'll call her
it,
Gladys.
Gladys.
is the fast one.
Gladys is
Yeah,
fast.
she does.
Just make sure she's on target with
Mhm.
her scoring by
Absolutely.
doing read behind.
Yep.
And address it as you
Yeah.
teach her. There you go.
That's a teaching moment.
Similar situation.
Totally.
Lois
And on the
Gladys.
on the reverse of that too, we heard in one of the locations when we did the live trainings that one of the BOCES actually has their readers go through an entire box of paper tests before they were even given ScorePoint logins. So they get in the groove and they have the ability to do that on paper before they get into ScorePoint and actually start scoring online. Any other questions?
Well, let's see here. Is Anne-Marie again? Anne-Marie, I'm nodding at you. You're right. So we'll leave it at that.
Leave it there.
Any other questions that we want to go over? Otherwise,
No, that's it. Yep.
okay.
We're doing good.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much. Any questions that did come in, we will.
This is the end?
Yeah.
Oh, come on, folks. Anything else? I thought we were just taking another break. Okay. So
This is it.
This is your moment. All right.
Any further questions? Where would they send them, Heather?
You know what? They can send them to Questar during scoring, right? So during scoring, a lot of times during CBT, you should go to your RIC first. Then you should, maybe come to NICED, CBT support. But scoring, Questar is the primary source for the first stop for scoring questions.
So with that being said, if you do have any other questions, please send them into CBT support.
Yep.
We will also take these very few questions and we'll post an FAQ for you.
Right.
And this is recorded.
Yep.
And we will post the
right.
recording of the webinar on CBT support.
We sure will within 48 hours. So if you want to organize a viewing party on your end, you can do that.
Manuals to come.
Manuals to come. That's right. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.